Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So in this video, what I wanted to do was a Q&A. I haven't done one for a long time, so I asked everybody on Instagram for their questions and I got a really huge response. There were some questions that were quite similar, and then there were some random questions as well. And I thought it'd be a good idea to go into depth into some of the questions and then maybe do a quick fire round at the end as well. So we're just going to dive straight into it. The first question from Sam is coffee or tea? So that's an important question actually. So I would have tea in the morning and when I get up, then I'd have coffee at 11, which is what I'm having now. Then I'd have afternoon tea and maybe a scone or something like that. Is it scone or scone? Scone. I think it's scone. I say scone. And then maybe a coffee in the evening. So yeah, tea and coffee, I like both of them. Now, if you're going for a particular brand of tea, then I would recommend Yorkshire tea. It's pretty good. Okay, on to the real photography questions. So the first one is all about style and developing your own style in photography. So Andrew and Eric asked similar questions here on thoughts of having and keeping a specific style for your photos, or how do you find that specific style for your photos? And I think it is quite tricky that. Certainly it took me quite a long time to get the sort of painterly style that I like in my photos. And when I look at my photos, I don't actually think they're too stylistic. But then a lot of people say to me that they can recognize one of my photos. So obviously I do have a style. I think it's something that's quite organic. I don't think you can force it. I think it's good to look at other people's styles. And there was another question as well about that. Should you copy other people's styles? And I think you shouldn't copy, but you can be inspired by other people's styles. So, you know, there's a photographer called Neil Burnell who I really like, and he has a style of desaturating his colours, and I thought that was quite interesting. I tried it on a few of my photos, and then I've probably adapted it in a certain part of my photography, but you wouldn't look at my photos and say they're exactly the same as his. So being influenced and inspired by other people is a good idea, but I don't think you should copy exactly what they do. And organically, you'll grow and your style will grow. Okay, the next question, which is a tough question to answer, which is from James, and it is, what has been the hardest lesson that you had to learn? Now, I suppose I could interpret that two ways, i.e. what is the hardest lesson in terms of learning my camera or my photography or skill, or what did I do that I thought, God, this is just, I'm not learning from this, I kept making the same mistake. And I think it's to do with the understanding that I'm not always going to get a good photo when I go on a shoot. So, you know, I always used to come back from a location, sometimes the light would be amazing, look at my photos and be quite disappointed, and I still am. I'm still disappointed. And the lesson I learned from that, which was quite a hard one, is that I'm not always going to get amazing photos. And quite often I get really crap photos, and I wish I could go back and redo it. And I think photography, you've got to think the long game really. You know, if you end up after a year of photography, and it's pretty much the same now as it was when I was shooting less, and I'm probably more critical now than I was, then if you end up between maybe 8 to 12 photos that you really like, that are great photos from a year, then that would be really good. Some years I might only shoot 4 or 5 that I think are really good, but that took me a while to get to grips with that, because what you've got to remember is you're always learning something when you go out and you fail. You probably learn more when you fail than when you succeed. Okay, there's a few questions now on locations. A lot of people ask me whether I was going to particular locations, so I won't answer all those, but there was a few that I think are worthy of answering, and a few that are quite interesting. So the first one from Trevor is a bucket list location you haven't yet photographed. So there's a few, but the one that I'm really, really excited about photographing, hopefully, I might do that this year, but I'll probably do it next year, is South Korea. There's some amazing landscapes in South Korea, and I really, really want to go there. So that's a bucket list location for me, somewhere that I've looked at for quite a number of years now. Hopefully I'll get to go there. Another question by Jordan is, where is your favourite location to shoot within the UK? Well, that has to be the Lake District. Now, Scotland's amazing, but because I grew up in the Lake District and I've photographed the Lake District so much, then I feel like I get better results when I go there. I know where to go when the light is a particular type of light, whether it's morning or the evening, or it's snowing or raining or windy. So I feel I can get the most out of it. So I love it. I love the Lake District. It's really varied. And if you haven't been there, make sure you give it a look. On to my next one, which is, have you ever been to Antarctica before? This is by AK Photography 000. Good name. So no. So this is probably in reference to my Antarctica workshop that I'm doing in 2022. I haven't been to Antarctica before. It's quite a difficult location to get to. It is expensive to get to, and I feel lucky that I'm able to do that as part of running a workshop. It's been a dream of mine ever since I watched David Attenborough on one of the natural history programs, and he was in Antarctica with penguins actually, and I really wanted to go there ever since then. And yeah, I'm lucky enough to be running that workshop. There's still some places, quick plug for it actually, and I've also added 3 more photographers. So as well as me and James Popsis and Mass Peter Everson, there's also Alan Wallace, who's an amazing astrophotographer. There's Adam Gibbs, who is the International Landscape Photographer of the Year last year, and Sarah Lindsay, who's an amazing Canadian landscape photographer. So, you know, if you do want to come, then there's a link in the description below, and there's still a few places left. So make sure you go and sign up, and you won't be disappointed. Okay, on to the next one. Have you ever been to Canada or plan to go? This is from Kickflip. So no, I've never been to Canada, and I do plan to go. In fact, the photographer Sarah, who's coming on the Antarctica workshop, I speak to her a lot. I love her style of photography, and I'll probably, hopefully, go and photograph with her maybe in the summer this year or autumn this year, or if not, it'll be next year. Just whilst we're talking about the Antarctica and travel, there's been a question here by I won't even pronounce this because it's like XVRPSCCDML. How's life been going? Any upcoming plans that you're particularly excited about? Well, there's 2 really. Well, there's more than 2. I'll explain one. I explained one last week, which was my book that's got pre-orders. Again, link in description. But there's the Antarctica trip in a couple of years. But I'm really excited about going to Patagonia in probably 4 or 5 weeks. Yeah. So Patagonia, if you've seen any of the photos from Fitzroy or any of the other locations around there, it looks absolutely stunning. And I'm doing quite an exciting project there as well. So more about that when I get back from Patagonia, but I'm going there for 2 weeks to record some videos and do some personal projects as well. So I'm really excited about that. That's probably the most exciting thing that I've got coming up this year. Okay, on to another question here from Brian, and that is, why do you keep changing studios? So yeah, if anybody's noticed, sometimes I have books in the background, sometimes I have this log cabin wall in the background. So I started off down where in my studio, in my study basically, in my house, and that's where I did most of my YouTube videos. And then I've got like a log cabin, a small log cabin in the garden, at the bottom of my garden. We had it for the kids really, so I've sort of taken it away from the kids, which seems cruel really, now I'm saying it. But anyway, they can still come in here, but it's mainly my studio come office. And I've not been able to work in here in the winter because I didn't have any heating, but I've got a log burner now, which you probably saw in last week's video. So that makes it really warm. But I'll quickly give you a studio tour as well. So I'll quickly show you around so you can see that. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at the studio here and the changes that I've made. So this is the bit that I have always shot in at this end of the cabin. You can see I've got my light here, and then my camera, I've got a top-down tripod, my microphone, and a desk, and then the background over here, and then I've got a place where I can sit and look at my prints as well, which worked reasonably well. But what I want to do is expand into this space here. So what the most important thing is I had some heat, so I've got the log burner here now, so that heats it up. In fact, it's red hot in here now. So I've got the log burner, which is fantastic. And what I'm going to do is add into this bit here, So I've got an area in last week's video you saw I was sat here and I can have this in the background. I just move the light around. What I'm going to do is here I'm going to have a bigger table that I can look at my prints on, because prints are really important to me. It's something that I'm really passionate about in my photography. So I want to have a dedicated sort of top-down video camera onto my prints, and then dedicated lighting onto those prints as well, so I can just light them really well. So I'm going to install some bars up here and then a table here. And it should give me a little bit more versatility, and yeah, it's fantastic. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. It's really good. Yeah, so it's going to be really exciting when I get everything sorted in the studio. It's probably going to take the whole year to get it all exactly how I want it, but it will enable me to produce just better quality videos, which is the thing that's most important. Okay, on to the next set of questions, and these are all to do with cameras and gear. And the first thing I want to say is I don't talk about cameras and gear too much on my channel, because I feel that the best way to improve your photography is going out and shoot with whatever you've got, and you know, that's how you're going to get the best results. It doesn't really matter what camera you've got. However, I do love getting new gear, and I love cameras, and I'm quite a tech head really. I enjoy you know, getting new lenses or trying new technology. But the reason I don't speak about it is for what I just said. It's not going to make a step change in your photography. So there's a set of questions. In fact, there's a lot of questions I got about gear, and I'm not going to answer them all. But what I will say is I'll just highlight some of these questions. So many people are shooting with Sony, so few with Nikon. What are your thoughts about the camera market, trends and brands? Can Micro Four Thirds cameras shoot professional level landscape photography adequately? Are you happy with Nikon setup? Best lenses for a D850? So to answer all those in one, what I'd say is, if you've bought a camera in the last couple of years, then it will be fine for whatever you're doing, unless you're printing something the size of this image here. And actually, this was done with a drone, this image. So even if you're printing an image that big, it will be fine. It doesn't make a lot of difference what camera you've got. What I'd say is the most important thing when you're buying a camera, when you're thinking about a camera, is don't go with the trend. Just go with something that you feel comfortable with, so that you know, the ergonomics of it are probably more important than the specifications. The reason that I shoot with Nikon is that I've always shot with Nikon. Now, if I came into the market again, I'd probably go with Sony, because there seems like Sony's got a lot of lenses to choose from. But it really doesn't matter whether I went with Nikon, Sony, Fuji, or any of the other camera manufacturers. So just don't worry about it too much. So on that, Gary's asked, do you think you'd ever use your drone for serious landscape photography? Well, I think that answers it. That was taken with my drone, and multiple other images that I've got were taken with my drone as well. You know, you can see them here. And yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's a 24 megapixel sensor. It's really good in low light. The most important thing is it allows me to get a different angle. And the most important thing with a camera is having it on you and be able to get to that angle. So when I was skiing, I had my phone because it was really accessible. I could just pull it out and shoot. You know, if I'm hiking up and camping somewhere, then I'll take my FUJI because it's super light and maybe just one lens. And you know, if I'm somewhere where I've just stopped at the side of the road and I want to get a better view, then I can just fly my drone and get high and get a good composition really simply. So it's the ability of that tool allowing you to do your job that's more important than the specification of that tool. Okay, there's a few questions also, or quite a lot of questions about making a living from photography. Now, this is another video in itself, so I can't go into these in a lot of detail, but there's questions like this. How did you get from an aspiration of making a living to actually making a living from photography? Is it possible to make a living from selling prints? Okay, I'll answer those in reverse order. I don't think you can make a living from selling prints unless you've probably been successful in some other area of photography. So I think to sell prints, you've got to be reasonably well known by a broad selection of people. I still don't sell a huge number of prints, and I think I've got quite a big following. So I think if you were coming in to the industry thinking you're a good photographer and you wanted to sell your prints but you didn't have a good following, then if I'm honest, I think you'd find that difficult to make a living from. I don't agree with this thing that people say photographers don't buy other photographers' prints. They do, but I think it's difficult to sell prints. Now, there are exceptions to that in that I think if you're very unique or you've got something that's very special and you have an exhibition or a gallery that's promoting your work, like Rachel Talabart's a good example of that. She's got something that was really unique, really special. It got a lot of press, and then she's got a gallery exhibiting her work in New York, I think, and London. Then, that then becomes something you can make a living from. But I think there are other ways that you can make a living from photography, things like workshops, tutorials, any type of tuition type thing is a good way, as long as you know what you're talking about. But selling prints is probably not the way to do it straight away, I'd say. Okay, onto a quick fire round now. So there's a lot of other questions that I wanted to answer, but I'm just going to give quick answers to these. So the first one is, what tripod do you currently use? I want to invest in something that will last. So I use a Benro tripod. I think any carbon fiber tripod that's reasonably sturdy is going to be good. There's lots of manufacturers that make them. I use Benro. I think they're really good. They're super simple. They do exactly what they say they do, and I've had no trouble with them. Before they sponsored me as well, I use them. So it's not as if they're paying me to say that. I went to them and asked if they'd sponsor me because I love their tripod. How do you combine all your travel for photography with your personal and family life? This shouldn't be in the quick fire round, should it really? But my family comes first is the most important thing. And before this, I used to run a software company, and I still travelled a lot, but I didn't see my kids as much because I was working 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Now I tend to have weeks when I'm away and weeks when I'm back at home. And I think it works really well. I think as long as my family comes first, then that's most important. I made a commitment when I started doing photography that I'd do it for happiness and not for monetary gain. And I'm successful now and I do make a good living from it, but my main fundamental reason for doing it is to be happy and enjoy what I do, and being able to make a living from enjoying what I do is really exciting and really amazing. But I think that happiness thing has to come first, and part of that is spending time with my family. Okay, the next one is, will your new internet speed change your editing workflow? i.e., will you use your iPad more? Yes, it will actually. So I think the reason you said this is that I use my iPad for Lightroom, and if you want to sync it, then you've got to upload images into the cloud and they download back onto your iPad, and then you can edit them on your iPad in Lightroom and it syncs the changes back. With my old connection of, I think it was about 5 megabits per second, it was really tiresome to do that because my kids would shout, "Dad, are you using Lightroom?" And then I had to switch it off and it just never worked really. But now with a faster connection, it makes a big difference. And it also means that I don't have to go and stand in the garden with holding my phone up to upload my videos to try and get a 4G signal. So it's going to make a difference to me, definitely. Okay, what's your favourite photo you have ever taken and where was it? So Suntree is my favourite photo I've ever taken. I'm not sure it's my best photo I've ever taken, but it was something that I spent a long time trying to get right, and I realised then that planning and waiting and being patient for the right time to get that photo was really important, and I got something that I thought was quite special. Okay, the next one is, how do you find the willpower to do photos in this UK weather? So I don't think that's difficult really. I actually enjoy weather that's a little bit inclement really. You know, if it's raining or if it's thundery or if it's snowy or if it's windy, all those things can produce something that's really special. In fact, a friend of mine, Rick, just was shooting in Wales recently, and it was super windy, and he was showing me this photo that he'd taken. I'll put it up now, and it just shows what you can get if you can actually stand up in the wind and take a photo. And it's just something super special. It evokes a mood and an emotion, and I think that's what you need to do in landscape photography. Okay, the next one is, do you ever struggle with passion, frustration with photography? I'm there now. Yep, that happens all the time to me. It goes in fits and starts. Sometimes I'm not as passionate about it. And what I tend to do is take a bit of a break, and then it works every time. So I just maybe take a week off, don't do any photography for a week, and then you know, I'll be dying to do it again. So I think having a break is the best thing. Okay, what field of photography do you admire the most that you don't practice? Astrophotography. So it's something that I'm definitely going to do a video on in the coming weeks and months. I'm going to do more astrophotography, and I really enjoy seeing people like Alan Wallace produce some amazing astrophotos. I really also enjoyed taking the aurora when I was in Iceland and thinking about it not just from the star perspective and the aurora and the sky, but also what you're going to put in the mid and foreground as well. So yeah, I think that's the field of photography that I don't really practice, but I really admire. What's the one thing you won't go without on a shoot, excluding camera or tripod, from Andy? Okay, so that's easy. Apple. You need an apple. If you don't have an apple, you're probably not going to get a good shot. Do you think there's a necessary minimum amount of time spent per week to get better? No, I don't actually. I think as long as you are passionate about it and want to do it, then any time you spend doing photography will improve. You know, I find that the best thing to do though is do things differently. You know, if you keep doing the same things expecting a different result, then you know there's a phrase around that, isn't there? Is that a definition of insanity or something? Probably got that completely wrong. Somebody in the comments will correct me on that. But anyway, you need to do different things. So even if you've got a small amount of time, just try different things, and that's probably how you'll start to improve. And the final one from a guy called Mass from Denmark is Iceland, Faroe Islands, or Lofoten is the question. So that's a tricky one. I've just come back from Iceland, so I'm probably going to say Iceland at the moment. Oh, it's really hard, that. I think if I could only go back to one again and again and again, it'd be Iceland. But from just the pure majestic nature of it, the Faroe Islands. Okay, I hope that's been useful. So in next Sunday's video, if all goes well, there should be a video from Lofoten in Norway. It looks like it's going to be really snowy there. I'm running a workshop, but I've also got some spare time to record a video as well. So hopefully I'll show that next Sunday. Thanks ever so much for watching. Until then, bye.